Snow blasted against the rock as Cade climbed higher, his fingers numb inside his gloves. The wind screamed through narrow mountain passes, sounding almost alive. Every breath burned in his chest, but he didn't slow down. The Deathpeak wasn't on any tourist map. It stood alone at the edge of the Andron Ridge, on a planet barely marked in Terran archives. Alien storms cloaked its true height, and only one human had ever been sent up there before. She never came back. That was 40 years ago. Her name was Dr. Elira Vaughn, an expert xenolinguist and exo-environmental researcher. Official reports said she likely died in an avalanche. But Cade had read something strange in her last message, an encrypted signal buried in old data logs, recently unearthed by a forgotten satellite drift. Cade wasn't a soldier, nor a scientist. He was a rescue climber who once pulled 2 people off a vertical glacier wall on Mars, using only a line and a pulse hammer. When no one else volunteered for this mission, he raised his hand. Now, scaling alien rock with jagged blue crystals jutting from frozen cracks, he kept thinking about that message. Elira's voice, weak, broken, had said one thing clearly: I'm not dead. They won't let me leave. No one had explained who they were. No one cared to. The file was buried under layers of bureaucracy. Most people believed she had simply gone mad from isolation. Cade didn't believe that. Not anymore. His boots crunched against a narrow ledge as he reached the next point. His visor scanned ahead, mapping the jagged ridge that seemed to twist unnaturally. The entire mountain felt wrong. Shapes shimmered and bent in the mist. Sometimes it sounded like whispers echoed through the ice. He set up an anchor, drove a magnetic pin into the rock, and pressed forward. The pressure dropped suddenly, like the air itself held its breath. Cade paused. Something moved above him, too fast, too quiet. He spun but saw nothing. Only swirling snow and jagged stone, it was said. This planet once belonged to the Avalari, an ancient alien race that vanished before humans ever reached the stars. Some believed they died out. Others believed they simply moved somewhere else. But legends said they left guardians behind. Cade didn't believe in ghosts. But he did believe in things with claws and teeth. Things that watched from places men weren't supposed to reach. He entered a narrow cavern, part of the mapped ridge route. But this one felt different. The walls glowed faintly with green veins, pulsing like living nerves. His boots slipped slightly on the stone, slick with frozen mist. The silence pressed against him. Then he heard it. A voice, not over the cum, but inside his own head. A whisper, soft and female. It spoke a name he didn't know, but it felt like it belonged to him. He shook his head hard and kept moving. Minutes later, he found markings on the wall etched with alien symbols, but some were human, a signature. Elira Vaughn had passed through this tunnel. The ink was faded, but fresh enough to prove she had survived for longer than anyone thought possible. Cade's heart pounded harder. He wasn't chasing a ghost. She might still be alive. Or trapped. If the Avalari truly left something behind, and Elira had found it, then she wasn't just lost. She was being held. He moved faster now, forgetting the ache in his legs. The path narrowed into a slit barely wide enough to squeeze through. On the other side, a sudden blast of warmth hit him. The wind stopped. He stepped into a massive chamber glowing with light that didn't come from any natural source. The chamber. Walls pulsed with energy. Symbols danced across them like language forming in real time. A soft hum filled the space, and Cade suddenly felt like he had entered something ancient and alive. Then he saw it. A figure, half buried in crystal at the far wall, not dead. Not decayed. Preserved in glowing amber-like stone, her eyes open. Elira. Cade didn't move for several seconds. She looked straight at him, not with fear, but calm acceptance. Her lips moved slightly, forming silent words. She was still alive. And she had been waiting for someone to come. Someone who finally dared to climb what no one else even tried. Cade didn't blink as Illyra's face stared back at him through the crystal. Her body looked untouched by time. Her skin was smooth, her hair frozen mid-motion as if caught in a gust of wind. But it was her eyes that held him there, wide open and glowing faintly with a silver hue. He stepped closer. The crystal didn't feel like ice. It hummed with a soft vibration under his glove. A thin line of energy ran from the floor to her chest, like a tether holding her in place. She was conscious, alive, waiting. His heart thudded in his chest. 40 years trapped like this. Breathing? Awake? He didn't understand the science, but this was not sleep. This was something stranger. Something designed to preserve and imprison. At the same time, Dr. Illyra Vaughn, he whispered, touching the edge of the crystal. Her eyes moved again. A flicker of light passed through them like recognition. Her lips twitched, and a single word formed silently. Help! He looked around. The chamber was shaped like a dome, with no visible exits other than the narrow crack he'd come through. Symbols lit the walls. Alien language, always shifting, never still. They seemed to pulse in time with Illyra's breath. Cade scanned the structure. He pulled out his tool pack and began setting up his resonance cutter. But as he powered it on, a deep vibration echoed through the walls. Something had noticed him. Something awake. The air shimmered. Light bent and twisted. And then something stepped out of the stone itself. It didn't crawl or walk. It simply appeared. A tall figure made of crystalline light, with no eyes and no mouth. Its shape flickered like a flame in wind. Cade froze. His hand hovered over the cutter. The figure moved toward Illyra and raised a long glowing arm. It hovered its hand over her prison, as if protecting her. Then it turned to Cade and tilted its head, curious. He didn't speak. He didn't move. His mind screamed for action, but his body stayed still. The being's presence was not hostile, but it was powerful. Very powerful. It stood in silence, waiting for him to try something. Then Illyra moved again. Her finger tapped the inside of the crystal. Just once. The symbol beneath her changed color. The being turned back to her, confused, and for a second, the glow around its body dimmed. That second was enough. Cade lunged. He slammed the cutter against the crystal, activating the beam. A blast of blue energy carved through the surface. The chamber filled with a scream, not from Illyra, not from Cade, but from the walls themselves. The alien being shrieked without sound, its form shaking violently. Light burst from its chest as it collapsed into shards of broken crystal. Cade kept cutting, sweat pouring down his face. The crystal cracked louder. Energy arced across the surface like lightning. With a final shatter, the prison broke. Illyra collapsed forward into Cade's arms. Her body was cold, but she was breathing. Her eyes fluttered, then locked on him. "You came," she whispered, voice hoarse and weak. "I'm Cade," he said, helping her to her feet. "I came because no one else did." She smiled faintly, then looked around, fear returning to her face. "We have to leave. Now, before it wakes the others." "What? Others?" he asked, but she was already pulling him toward the wall. Her fingers traced a pattern on the glowing surface. A section of the wall dissolved, revealing a hidden tunnel lit by soft blue light. She didn't wait. Cade followed. The tunnel was smooth, artificial, ancient. He didn't know who built it, but it wasn't human. The symbols on the walls pulsed as they passed, like the place was alive and aware of them. Illyra leaned against him, struggling to walk. "I made contact. They didn't want me to leave. They said I was the first human to listen, the first to understand. But I didn't agree with them. I said no. So they locked me away." "Who were they?" he asked again. She looked up at him with tired, glowing eyes. "They called themselves the Keepers of Memory. They don't die. They just change form. That one was only a fragment. The tunnel twisted sharply. A new sound echoed behind them, a low rising hum. The mountain was waking up. Whatever had been watching before was now coming closer. Cade tightened his grip on her shoulder and picked up speed. They burst into a wider cavern with frozen light, hanging from the ceiling like icicles. Ahead, a beam of sunlight pierced through a jagged hole. An exit, but something moved at the far edge, rising from the ground like smoke given form. Alira gasped. It's not going to let us go easily. Cade stepped in front of her, blade in hand, and faced the mist. The mist creature grew taller with each breath Cade took. Its shape had no clear face, only twisting shadows and pulsing light. It didn't walk or float, it simply moved, like smoke chasing wind. Cade raised his blade. It was designed to cut through ice and metal, not energy or spirits. Still, he stepped forward to shield Alira. She leaned heavily on him, her breathing short and uneven. That's not one of the keepers, she said. That's something worse. The creature stopped, just short of the cavern's center. Then, with a sharp movement, it split into three. All three shadows reached out long, thin arms toward them. The air buzzed with energy. The temperature dropped sharply. We have to run, Alira said, eyes wide. That thing wasn't here before. It woke up because I escaped. It was never meant to leave this chamber. They turned and ran toward the light ahead. Cade helped her over frozen rocks and slippery ground. The exit wasn't far now, but the shadows followed fast, closing the distance without touching the floor. They moved like thoughts, not bodies. A sudden beam of energy shot past Cade's face. It slammed into a wall and exploded in a burst of white sparks. He ducked and pulled Alira down behind a broken pillar. Do they have weapons? He asked. No, she whispered. They are weapons. Thought made solid, anger turned real. If they reach us, they'll tear our minds apart before our bodies. Cade knew fear. He had faced cliffs that crumbled under his fingers. He had once fallen through a collapsing glacier. But nothing compared to this. This fear was in his bones, ancient, primal, like prey sensing a predator. It could never fight. He peeked out and saw the creatures flickering in and out of sight. They didn't chase blindly. They studied him, waiting, testing. Alira coughed beside him, her energy fading fast. If they didn't move now, she wouldn't make it. He took a breath and counted to 3. Then he stood and pulled her up. They ran again, faster this time, ignoring the pain in their legs. Light grew stronger ahead. The exit wasn't a tunnel. It was a broken hole in the mountain wall, high above the clouds. The drop beyond it was sheer, but there was a narrow ledge to the left. Cade grabbed the edge and guided Alira out first. Her fingers trembled as she held onto the stone. The wind howled, but it was clean and sharp compared to the deathly air inside. Cade followed just as a blast of dark energy struck the rock above. Chunks fell past them into the fog below. The mountain shook. Cracks ran through the ledge beneath their feet. It wouldn't hold for long. He looked back and saw the mist creatures at the opening. But they didn't follow. They stopped at the edge, writhing in frustration. Something invisible held them inside, a boundary. A prison. They can't leave the core, Alira said, breathless. They're bound to the heart of the mountain. As long as we stay beyond it, they can't touch us. Cade didn't trust it. The ledge was crumbling. They needed to descend fast. He secured a rappel line to a jagged crystal anchor and helped Alira attach her harness. You remember how to descend? He asked. Muscle memory, she replied, eyes closed. I just need to stay awake long enough to try. They began the slow descent. Cade kept one eye on the sky above. The mist creatures didn't vanish. They watched silently, their forms pressed against the edge of their invisible prison. He could feel their hate through the wind. Halfway down, Alira lost her grip. Her foot slipped, and she spun sideways. Cade caught her line and steadied her. "Stay focused," he said. "We're almost there." The clouds thinned as they dropped lower. Warmth returned slowly. The color of the rock changed from icy blue to darker gray. Life stirred below, birds, distant trees, the first signs of breathable air. Cade finally touched down and helped Alira to the ground. She collapsed, exhausted but alive. He knelt beside her, watching the top of the Deathpeak. The opening was barely visible now, swallowed by mist. "We made it," she whispered. But Cade wasn't sure the mountain would forget this escape. Cade kept watch as Alira rested beside a glowing rock, her face pale but calm. They were no longer on the mountain's upper body, but still far from safe. The shadows above had vanished, but he didn't believe they were gone. Alira stirred and slowly sat up. "How long was I out?" she asked. Cade handed her a water pack. She drank in small sips, shivering as the cold left her body. Her voice had regained some strength, but her hands still trembled. "Maybe an hour," Cade replied. "Long enough for the wind to shift. We need to keep moving." The extraction ship is still a day out. They walked along a narrow trail hugging the side of the mountain. Strange plants with glowing tips grew from cracks in the stone. The air was clearer here, but it held an old smell like rain on metal. Alira kept glancing over her shoulder. "You think they're still watching us?" Cade asked. She nodded. "Not just watching. Listening. This place is alive in ways no one understands." That mountain wasn't just a tomb. It was a warning. They crossed a broken bridge made of woven roots and ice. Below, a deep canyon opened into darkness. Cade guided Alira carefully, testing each step before letting her follow. A strange hum vibrated through the bridge, like a voice buried in wood. On the other side, they found an abandoned research outpost half buried in snow. The old structure was built from earth alloys, rusted now and covered in moss. Cade pushed the door open, and cold stale air poured out. Inside, shattered equipment and broken furniture told the story of a fast evacuation. Papers were frozen too. The floor. A cracked photo sat on a desk. Alira and 3 other researchers smiling in front of a lander. Her hand shook as she picked it up. "They were all taken," she said softly. "One by one, the mountain chose them. It didn't want me until I refused to join. I fought back, and it punished me by keeping me alone." Cade looked through the remains for anything useful. A small emergency heater still worked. He powered it on and set it near Alira. She hugged her knees close and closed her eyes. For the first time, she looked like someone truly trying to come back to life. A map was pinned to the wall. Cade studied it. The outpost wasn't far from a signal tower. If he could reach it, he could boost their beacon. That would bring the rescue ship faster. But it meant leaving Alira alone again. "I need to hike to that tower," he said. "I'll be gone 2 hours. Will you be okay?" She looked at him, fear flashing behind her eyes. Then she nodded. "I've waited 40 years. I can wait 2 more." Cade left the outpost, climbing over thick frost-covered boulders. The air was sharp and dry. Snowflakes spun around him like stars. The trail to the tower wound through what looked like petrified trees, their trunks twisted into unnatural shapes. He felt watched again. Not by something close, but something buried deep. Like the mountain had eyes in every stone, he didn't stop. He reached the base of the tower, half frozen but still standing. The dish above groaned in the wind. Cade opened the control box. Circuits were damaged, but he rerouted the signal with his tools. The beacon lit up, blinking red 3 times, then steady green. The connection was live. He transmitted the emergency code. On his way back, the sky changed. Clouds moved too quickly, forming strange spirals above the peak. The ground trembled slightly, like the planet itself was shifting. He picked up his pace, heart thudding against his chest. He returned to the outpost and found Alira standing outside, staring at the sky. "It's angry," she said. "The mountain knows we called for help. It never let anyone leave. It's waking up again." Cade put his hand on her shoulder. "Let it wake. We're not staying." They gathered what little supplies remained and prepared for descent. The trail ahead led into a valley covered in strange blue fog. Alira hesitated, but Cade walked forward without fear. She followed, step by step. Behind them, the outpost lights flickered and died. The mountain rumbled one last time. Above, in the clouds, a single glowing eye opened and watched them disappear into the mist. The fog in the valley was thick and glowing, casting blue light on the rocky ground. Every step Cade took left a faint print behind, as if the ground remembered where he had walked. Alira stayed close, her eyes scanning the mist with quiet fear. "Do you remember this place?" Cade asked. Alira nodded slowly. "Yes, this was where the others vanished. We thought it was just strange weather. Then we saw the lights in the fog. They moved carefully, avoiding patches where the ground cracked and hissed. Strange plants grew in the corners, pulsing with green veins. Alira paused beside one and touched its leaf. The plant shivered and withdrew, as if it recognized her. "We're getting close to their boundary," she said. "The keepers marked this land long before we came. This isn't just a place, it's a memory field. If you stay too long, it starts pulling your thoughts." Cade didn't respond. He tightened his grip on his blade and kept moving. He didn't like the way the fog whispered. Sometimes he heard his own name spoken in a voice that sounded like his mother's. Other times, he heard nothing at all, yet still felt seen. They reached a series of stone pillars, each one carved with symbols from dozens of languages, some human, some alien. Alira touched one of them and whispered, "These are grave markers. The explorers who didn't make it." Cade looked around. "Their bodies?" Alira shook her head. "No bodies, just memory. That's what the mountain takes when it can't take the flesh. It stores the rest here." A sudden gust of wind blew the fog apart for a moment, revealing a massive shape in the distance. A structure half buried, built into the side of a cliff. Its surface shimmered with moving patterns, like it was breathing. Alira's hand trembled as she pointed. "That's it. That's where they kept me before they moved me to the crystal chamber. I think it was the heart of their world, before it turned into this mountain. It remembers everything that ever happened here." They moved toward the structure, climbing over broken stones and silent machines long forgotten. Alira stumbled, her strength failing again. Cade caught her, lifting her gently and carrying her the last few meters. The air grew warmer as they approached. Inside, the walls pulsed with soft white light. The architecture was strange, curved and seamless, with no corners or shadows. It felt alive, like walking into a dream that had no beginning or end. Symbols lit up under their feet as they walked. The structure seemed to recognize Alira. Soft music played, low and slow, like a heartbeat. She whispered, "It's welcoming me back. It still thinks I belong here." They reached a central chamber filled with crystal seats and floating orbs. One orb hovered close, spinning slowly. Alira touched it. A voice filled the room, not spoken aloud, but inside their minds, it said, "She returned." The bond was not broken. Unity remains. Cade stepped in front of her. "She doesn't belong to you. She's free. I came for her, and we're leaving." The voice replied, "You came, another human. This is rare. You are not like the rest. You climbed for her. That act is remembered." The chamber darkened. The walls showed visions, Alira's past, her team, the day she was taken. Cade saw himself climbing, bleeding, fighting through storms. Then the images faded and the silence returned. "You both carry memory now," the voice said. "But memory is not always a gift. If you leave, it will follow. It will grow. It will change you. We'll take that risk, Cade said firmly. Elira stepped beside him, nodding. We want to live, not exist in frozen thought. The orb spun faster, glowing brighter, then slowly dimmed. The voice said one last thing. Then go. But when your dreams change, do not return. The mountain remembers, even when you forget. A side wall opened, revealing a smooth path of silver stone. Fresh air flowed through it. Cade helped Elira walk, both of them silent. The path led upward, toward sunlight, toward freedom. They emerged into a green valley far from the mountain's peak. A shuttle hovered above, its lights blinking. Rescue had arrived. Cade raised his hand and signaled. The ship descended slowly, dust rising from the grass. They boarded in silence, the door closing behind them. As the shuttle rose into the sky, both looked back one last time. The Deathpeak stood tall and cold, its summit wrapped in cloud. For now it had let them go. The shuttle soared above the mountain, carrying Cade and Elira far from the icy prison that had held her for decades. The rescue pilot didn't speak much, only nodding as they were brought aboard and seated near the medical bay. Elira's body trembled with fatigue. Her skin was pale and her eyes fluttered with exhaustion. But she was alive. That fact alone was enough for Cade to sit in silence, watching her breathe and listening to the soft hum of the ship. He looked out the window. The mountain was shrinking behind them, but something about it still pulled at his thoughts. A strange weight settled in his chest, not fear, not relief, but something in between. The medic scanned Elira and frowned. Her vitals are steady, but her brainwave activity is unusual. There's a pattern I haven't seen before. Almost like she's thinking in layers. Cade didn't know how to explain what they had seen. He simply said, she was connected to something down there. Something that doesn't think like we do. The pilot called back. We're 2 hours from the orbital station. Once we dock, she'll be taken to the central med bay. Specialists will help her recover. Elira stirred and opened her eyes. She looked at Cade and whispered, they're still with me. I can feel them. They didn't stop me, but they didn't let go either. He took her hand gently. You're not going back, whatever they are. They can't have you anymore. Her lips curved into a tired smile. I know, but they left something in me, a memory seed. It's growing fast. I see things I never saw before. The past, their world, their language. All of it lives inside me now. Cade didn't speak. He just nodded and stayed beside her. Whatever changes were happening, they would face them together. He hadn't climbed the Deathpeak just to leave her behind again. The shuttle landed smoothly at the orbital dock. Medical personnel rolled a floating bed toward Elira and gently moved her onto it. Cade followed as they passed through the sterile corridors of the station. Everything here felt too clean, too quiet. The cold silence of the mountain was gone, but now replaced with something even stranger. As if reality itself didn't trust what they had brought back. The lead doctor greeted them in a private room. He asked Cade to wait outside. While they examined Elira, Cade paced the hallway, his hands clenched in his jacket. He could still feel the mountain under his boots. After 30 minutes, the doctor returned. Her condition is stable, but her mind is shifting. She speaks in 2 voices. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes they don't. It's like she's having a conversation with something inside her. She said they gave her a memory seed. Cade replied, "Can you remove it?" The doctor shook his head. "It's not physical. It's woven into her brainwaves. We don't know how to isolate it. We've never seen anything like it." Cade looked through the window into her room. Elira sat upright, staring at a blank wall, her lips moving silently. Her expression wasn't scared. It was calm. Too calm. He entered the room and sat beside her. "Do you know where you are?" She nodded. "Yes, but part of me is still there. They're showing me something. A cycle. A warning. They want me to tell others, but only those who truly listen. What do they want us to hear? He asked. They want to remind us that the stars don't belong to us, that memory is power and forgetting is the real danger. If we forget them, they die. If we remember them, they live forever. Cade sat back, trying to understand. The mountain hadn't just been a prison. It had been a library, a temple, a machine powered by memory. It didn't hold bodies. It held stories, and now Illyra carried one of those stories inside her. The door opened. A station official entered and handed Cade a message. It was from the agency. They wanted a full report. They wanted answers. But Cade wasn't sure what. He could tell them that they would believe. He looked at Illyra again. She had closed her eyes, but her fingers still moved across the blanket, drawing invisible symbols only she could see. They had escaped the Deathpeak, but something had followed them. Illyra sat silently in the corner of the observation room, her eyes unfocused as if she was watching something invisible to everyone else. The lights around her pulsed gently, reacting to her presence in subtle rhythms no one could explain. Cade stood behind the glass, watching with a heavy heart. The medic said she was physically recovering fast, but her mind was splitting between two realities. One part lived in the present. The other was still trapped in the mountain's memory. He entered the room when the doctor nodded permission. Illyra looked at him and smiled softly. I dreamed you were climbing again. But this time the mountain was moving. It didn't want to be climbed anymore. He sat beside her and gently took her hand. Maybe it's afraid of what we found. Maybe it fears what we'll tell others. She nodded. It should be. If people knew what's buried there, they'd try to control it. They'd break the memory and use it for power. That's what the keepers feared most. Cade remembered the words of the voice in the chamber. It didn't warn them out of hatred. It warned them like a parent warns a child. About fire. Power without wisdom was what destroyed the keeper's world. A soft chime echoed in the room. The screen on the wall flashed. Incoming message from Earth Command. A transmission requested an update on Illyra's mental state. Cade ignored it. He didn't want her turned into a research case. She suddenly looked toward the door. They're coming, aren't they? Scientists. Reporters. They'll want to ask questions, measure me, test me. I'm not ready. You don't have to speak to them, Cade said. I'll tell them what they need to hear. I'll protect you from what they don't. Her eyes filled with quiet relief. She squeezed his hand. Do you think I'm still human? She asked. I feel like I brought a piece of the mountain with me. It's in my blood now. Cade didn't answer with words. He stood and placed his hand over her heart. This is human, he said. As long as it beats for something. More than survival, you are human. Outside the station, a small diplomatic ship docked with a soft hiss. The visitors wore black uniforms marked with gold. Earth Council agents. They came with orders and expectations, but not with understanding. The lead agent met with the doctor first. He requested full access to Illyra's scan data, her logs, and even a tissue sample. The doctor hesitated but complied. No one wanted to challenge the council directly. Cade intercepted them as they made their way to the observation wing. She's still recovering. This isn't the time for interviews or tests. The agent smiled politely. We'll be gentle. But Earth needs answers. Memory tech is unheard of. If what she carries is real, it could change everything. Imagine storing history not in books, but in people. That's not what it's for, Cade said firmly. It wasn't meant to be used, it was meant to be remembered. There's a difference. They pushed past him anyway. Illyra stood as they entered, her body tense. The lights in the room dimmed slightly. Her voice was calm but sharp. Ask your questions quickly. I will only speak once. The agent placed a recorder on the table. What did the keepers leave in your mind? Describe the memory seed. Illyra closed her eyes. It's not a seed, it's a mirror. It shows me things I never lived. Pain that wasn't mine. Love that belonged to people long dead. Cities that breathed. Stars that sang. It's not information. It's feeling. The agent didn't blink. Can it be copied? No, she said. It changes with me. It grows. If you try to extract it, you'll kill the message. And maybe me too. Cade stepped forward. She told you. That should be enough. She's not your experiment. The agent collected his device and nodded. For now. But Earth will decide what happens next. They left the room, but their eyes lingered. Cade sat beside her again. They won't stop, will they? No, she said. But the mountain taught me something else. Memory isn't just stored. It's defended. If they try to misuse what I carry, it will fight back. Cade looked at her and saw something new in her gaze. Not fear, not confusion. Resolve, news of Alira's rescue spread quickly through the system. Some hailed it as a miracle. Others whispered warnings about what she might now be. Earth Council demanded full control, but station leadership delayed them with red tape. Cade stayed by her side, watching as she grew stronger each day. Her eyes changed. Not in color, but in focus. She no longer looked at things. She looked through them, like reading a deeper truth beneath the surface. A week after the council agents left, Alira stood in front of the station's main viewport. Stars shimmered beyond the glass, and she moved her hands slowly across the air as if writing a story only she could see. They want to use it, she said quietly. They want to turn memory into a weapon. But they don't understand what it really is. It's not a tool, it's a trust. The Keepers chose to share their legacy, not sell it. Cade leaned against the wall behind her. Then don't give them anything. Let it die with you if that's what's needed. She turned. It doesn't have to die. It just has to grow in the right direction. If I pass it to someone who understands, it survives. If I bury it, the mountain will remain silent forever. Outside the station, a diplomatic envoy approached. This time, it wasn't just humans. Several alien delegates had arrived, drawn by the rumors of a human who carried ancient memory. They didn't come to threaten. They came to listen. Cade watched them dock with quiet suspicion. Alira, however, stood tall. As the doors opened, the leader of the delegation, a tall being with silver skin and soft black eyes, stepped forward and bowed his head. We heard the Deathpeak stirred, he said. That means the archive is breathing again. You carry its voice now. Will you share it? Alira nodded slowly, not as a servant, not as a lab sample, but as a keeper, like those before me. If you will listen with respect, I will speak. The alien leader smiled. Then speak, and we will listen. The next day, a private hall was opened. No recordings were allowed. No devices. Only people willing to listen without trying to own what they heard. Alira sat in the center of the room and began to tell the story. She spoke not of war or technology, but of lives, families, loss, beauty. She described the Keeper's last days, their choice to become memory itself, and their warning to all who followed after. Her words were not just heard. They were felt. Cade sat at the back of the room. His hands rested on his knees, his heart steady. He didn't understand every detail of what she said, but he understood her. And that was enough. After hours of storytelling, Alira stood and bowed her head. The room stayed silent for a long time. Then one by one, each listener placed their hand over their heart and nodded. A promise to remember, not to use. Later that evening, Cade and Alira stood together near the viewing deck. Below them, Earth glowed like a blue gem. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small crystal, the same color as the ones from the mountain's core. I kept one, she said. A piece of the chamber. Not for power, for remembrance. If I ever forget who I am, I want something to remind me. He looked at the crystal. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Not mechanical, not artificial, Alive. What will you do now? He asked. She smiled. I'll travel. Speak. Plant this memory in places where people care. Let it take root in soil made of kindness, not fear. Cade nodded. And me. You climbed once, she said. But there are other peaks. Other forgotten voices waiting to be heard. We could climb together. He smiled back, understanding. What she meant, the mountain hadn't broken them. It had forged them into something new. As the station orbited slowly above Earth, the stars watched quietly. Somewhere deep on the Deathpeak, the wind shifted and carried no scream, only silence. A silence that meant peace, because memory had survived.